The moon hung low over the cottage that night, casting long shadows across the garden. Thomas stood at his post by the side gate, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. He had been a security guard for 12 years, but something about this evening felt different. The silence was too thick, too heavy. He pulled his jacket tighter and checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. 3 more hours until his shift ended. That's when he heard it. A soft scraping sound. Metal against wood. Thomas froze. His ears strained against the darkness. There it was again. Coming from the east fence, near the rose bushes, Mrs. Patterson loved so much. He reached for his flashlight, but didn't turn it on yet. Years of experience had taught him that darkness could be an advantage. He moved slowly, his boots careful on the gravel path. The cottage behind him was dark except for a single light in the upstairs bedroom. The Pattersons were inside, safe and unaware, and Thomas intended to keep it that way. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button. We share real emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. The scraping grew louder. Now Thomas could hear breathing, heavy, desperate. Someone was climbing the fence. His heart began to pound, but his hands stayed steady. He'd dealt with trespassers before. Usually kids looking for trouble or drunks who'd lost their way, but this felt intentional, calculated. Thomas rounded the corner of the cottage and stopped. There, silhouetted against the fence, was a figure. A man halfway over the top, struggling with something bulky strapped to his chest. The fence groaned under his weight. "Stop right there," Thomas called out, his voice firm but controlled. The figure jerked, nearly losing his grip. For a moment, everything went still. Then the man tried to move faster, throwing his leg over the top of the fence. Thomas clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness like a knife, landing directly on the intruder's face. The man threw up his hand to shield his eyes, and that's when Thomas saw it. A camera, an expensive one, with a long lens that caught the light. Not a burglar. A photographer. But why would a photographer be climbing a fence at midnight? What could possibly be worth this risk? "Get down from there," Thomas ordered, moving closer. Now, the man hesitated, his body frozen on top of the fence. His face was lean and unshaven, his eyes wild with something that looked like fear mixed with determination. "You don't understand," the man said, his voice shaking. "I have to get this shot. I have to." Thomas's jaw tightened. "The only thing you have to do is get off that fence before I call the police," the photographer begged. "Just let me," but Thomas had already pulled out his phone. His finger hovered over the emergency call button. That's when the photographer made his choice. He jumped, not down to the outside where he came from, but down into the garden, onto the Pattersons' property. The camera swung wildly on its strap as he hit the ground and stumbled forward. Thomas's instincts kicked in. He moved fast, closing the distance between them. The photographer scrambled to his feet and raised the camera, pointing it toward the cottage's upstairs window. "Drop it," Thomas said, his voice cold now. The photographer's finger moved to the shutter button. In that moment, Thomas understood. This wasn't about property. This was about privacy, about someone's life being stolen through a lens. He didn't think. He just acted. Thomas lunged forward and grabbed the camera strap. The photographer pulled back, his grip tight. For several seconds, they struggled in the darkness, the expensive equipment swinging between them like a pendulum. "Let go," the photographer shouted. But Thomas held on. What happened next would change everything. Asterisk. The camera strap dug into Thomas's palm as he pulled harder. The photographer stumbled backward, his feet slipping on the dew-wet grass. His face twisted with desperation, like a man drowning and refusing to let go of an anchor. "You're making a mistake," the photographer gasped. "Do you know who's in there? Do you know what this is worth?" Thomas didn't answer. He yanked the strap again, this time with enough force to pull the photographer off balance. The man fell to one knee, but his grip on the camera never loosened. "This shot could change my life," the photographer pleaded, looking up at Thomas with wild eyes. "One picture. That's all I need. Just one." "Not on my watch," Thomas said. He could see it now, even in the dim light. This wasn't just some amateur with a hobby. The camera was professional grade, probably worth more than Thomas made in 3 months. The photographer's vest had multiple pockets, each one bulging with lenses and equipment. This was someone who made a living invading other people's private moments. The photographer suddenly shifted his weight and twisted hard to the left. The movement caught Thomas off guard. The strap slipped from his fingers for just a second, and that second was enough. The photographer rolled away and jumped to his feet, bringing the camera up to his face in one smooth motion. The shutter clicked. Once, twice, 3 times. Thomas felt anger surge through his chest. He moved forward fast, reaching for the camera again. But this time, the photographer was ready. He spun away, using the camera as a shield, backing toward the cottage wall. "I got it," the photographer said, a strange smile crossing his face. "I got the shot." Thomas's mind raced. Whatever was on that camera, it wasn't meant to be there. The Pattersons were good people. Quiet, private, they didn't deserve this violation. "Give me the camera," Thomas said, his voice low and dangerous. "Not a chance," the photographer replied. "This is my property." "You can't, you're trespassing." Thomas cut him off. "You broke the law the moment you climbed that fence." The photographer's smile faded. His eyes darted toward the fence, calculating his chances of escape. Thomas could read the thought process clearly. The man was trying to decide if he could make it back over before Thomas caught him. He could in single quotes. Thomas moved sideways, positioning himself between the photographer and the fence. The 2 men stood there in the garden, facing each other like gunslingers in an old western. The only sound was their breathing and the distant hum of traffic on the main road. "Listen to me," Thomas said, forcing his voice to stay calm. "I don't know what you think you're going to do with those photos, but it's not worth it. Delete them. Hand over the camera, and I'll let you walk out of here." Photographer laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let me walk." "You think you're in charge here?" He patted the camera. "This is worth 50,000, maybe more. You think I'm going to just hand it over?" 50,000. The number hung in the air between them. Thomas felt his stomach tighten. That was more money than he'd ever seen in one place. More than enough to make someone do something stupid. "It's in that house?" Thomas asked. "Who are you hunting?" The photographer's expression changed. For a moment, something that looked like shame flickered across his face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "That's none of your business," he said. "Everything that happens on this property is my business," Thomas replied. "That's what they pay me for." Suddenly, a light turned on inside the cottage. Both men froze. Thomas's heart jumped into his throat. Someone was awake. The photographer saw his chance. He bolted toward the fence, the camera clutched to his chest. Thomas reacted instantly, his legs pumping as he gave chase. The photographer was faster than he looked, but Thomas had the angle. He closed the distance in seconds. Just as the photographer reached the fence and jumped for the top rail, Thomas caught him. His hand closed around the camera strap once more. This time he didn't pull. He held firm and let the photographer's own momentum work against him. The strap went taut. The photographer's body jerked backward in midair. His hand clutched at the camera, trying to save it. But physics won. The strap broke with a sharp snap. The camera flew through the air, tumbling end over end. Both men watched it arc through the darkness. Seeming to fall in slow motion, it hit the stone path with a sickening crunch. The sound of shattering glass and cracking plastic echoed through the garden. Asterisk for 3 full seconds. Neither man moved. They both stared at the broken camera lying on the stone path. Pieces of glass glinting in the moonlight like scattered diamonds. The expensive lens had separated from the body on impact. The viewfinder hung at an odd angle. Then the photographer made a sound. It was something between a gasp and a scream, raw and painful, like someone had just told him a loved one had died. No. He dropped from the fence and ran to the camera, falling to his knees beside it. His hands hovered over the wreckage, shaking, afraid to touch it, as if that might somehow make the destruction more real. Thomas stood back. his chest heaving from exertion and adrenaline. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a heavy weight settling in his stomach. The photographer picked up the camera body with trembling fingers. The back panel had cracked open, exposing the memory card and internal circuits. He pressed the power button. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Asterisk, you destroyed it, the photographer said, his voice hollow. Do you have any idea what you've done? You destroyed it yourself, Thomas replied quietly. The moment you decided to climb that fence. The photographer looked up at him, and in the moonlight, Thomas could see tears on the man's face. Real tears. Not from physical pain, but from something deeper. That camera was everything, the photographer said. It was my whole career. My whole life. Thomas felt an uncomfortable twinge of sympathy, but he pushed it down. And what about their life? He gestured toward the cottage. The people inside. Don't they deserve privacy? Don't they deserve to live without someone hiding in the bushes with a camera? The photographer didn't answer. He just sat there on the cold ground, cradling the broken equipment like it was a dying pet. The cottage door opened. Light spilled out into the garden. Thomas turned to see Mr. Patterson standing in the doorway, wrapped in a bathrobe, his gray hair messy from sleep. Thomas, what's going on out here? Mr. Patterson called. His eyes adjusted to the darkness and landed on the photographer kneeling by the path. Who is that? Just handling a situation, Mr. Patterson, Thomas said, keeping his voice steady. Everything's under control. Please go back inside. But Mr. Patterson didn't move. He stepped out onto the porch, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding to anger in the span of seconds. Is that a photographer? He asked, his voice tight. Was he trying to? He stopped, his jaw clenching. Was he after Emma? The photographer's head snapped up at the name. Thomas saw recognition flash in Mr. Patterson's eyes. The older man's hands formed fists at his sides. Get off my property, Mr. Patterson said, his voice shaking with controlled rage. Get off right now, before I call the police. Mr. Patterson, please, Thomas said gently. Let me handle this. Go check on your family. Mr. Patterson hesitated. Then his wife appeared behind him, her hand on his shoulder. She whispered something Thomas couldn't hear. Mr. Patterson nodded slowly, but the anger didn't leave his face. I want him arrested, Mr. Patterson said. I want charges pressed. I want his wife squeezed his shoulder again. He took a breath. Just get him out of here, Thomas, please. They went back inside. The door closed, but Thomas could see them watching through the window, silhouettes backlit by the warm interior light. Thomas turned back to the photographer, who was now standing, the broken camera hanging limply from his hand. Emma Patterson, Thomas said slowly, pieces clicking together in his mind. She's the one you were after. The photographer didn't deny it. He just stared at the cottage with an expression Thomas couldn't quite read. She's 17, Thomas continued, feeling disgust rise in his throat. She's a child. She's a celebrity, the photographer shot back, some fight returning to his voice. She chose this life when she signed that record deal. She chose to be famous.
Ow.
She chose to make music, Thomas corrected. She didn't choose to have people stalking her house at midnight. Emma Patterson. Thomas knew who she was now. Everyone did. The teenage singer whose song had exploded across the internet 6 months ago. The girl with the voice that made grown adults cry. She'd been on talk shows, at award ceremonies, on magazine covers. But apparently that wasn't enough. People wanted more. They wanted private moments. Unguarded moments. They wanted to catch her without makeup, or crying, or doing something embarrassing they could sell to the highest bidder. How did you even find this place? Thomas asked. The photographer wiped his face with the back of his hand. I have my sources. You mean you paid someone to give you their address? The photographer's silence was answer enough. Thomas pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. Wait, the photographer said quickly. Wait, please. He looked at the broken camera in his hand, then back at Thomas. Look, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. But if you call the police, this becomes public. There'll be a police report. Other photographers will find out. They'll all come here. Thomas's finger hovered over the screen. The photographer had a point, and he knew it. Thomas's thumb remained frozen above the call button. The photographer was right, and that made everything more complicated. A police report would be public record. Other photographers would see it. They'd have the address confirmed. Within days, maybe hours. The cottage would be surrounded by cameras. The very thing Thomas was trying to prevent would become inevitable. "You're manipulating me," Thomas said, lowering the phone slightly. "I'm telling you the truth," the photographer replied. "Look, I know I'm the bad guy here. I get it. But think about that girl inside. You call the cops, and her life becomes 10 times harder. Is that what you want?" Thomas's jaw clenched. He hated that the man was making sense. He hated being put in this position. "What's your name?" Thomas asked. The photographer hesitated. "Marcus." "Well, Marcus, here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me every piece of equipment you have. The camera, the lenses, the memory cards, everything. Then you're going to tell me who gave you this address? And then you're going to leave and never come back." Marcus's face went pale. "I can't give you the memory card. The photos are already destroyed," Thomas interrupted. "The camera's dead. The memory card probably is too. But I'm taking it anyway, just to be sure." Marcus looked down at the broken camera. His shoulders sagged. He carefully removed the cracked memory card and held it out. His hand was still shaking. Thomas took it and pocketed it. The lenses? All of them. Slowly, Marcus removed his vest and emptied the pockets. 3 expensive lenses, a flash unit, spare batteries, and 2 more memory cards. He piled everything on the ground at Thomas's feet. The total value of the equipment probably exceeded Thomas's yearly salary. "The person who gave you the address," Thomas prompted. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "A delivery driver. He brought packages here a few times. Saw the girl through the window. Recognized her. I paid him $500 for the information." Thomas felt anger flare again. Someone Emma's family trusted, someone who came to their door regularly, had sold them out for $500. His name? "I don't know his real name," Marcus said quickly. "We communicated through an encrypted app. That's how it works in this business. Nobody uses real names." "What company does he work for?" Marcus told him. Thomas made a mental note to inform the Pattersons. They'd need to change their delivery arrangements. "Now go," Thomas said. "And Marcus, if I ever see you near this property again, I won't hesitate to call the police. Police report or not. Understand?" Marcus nodded. He looked at the pile of equipment on the ground one last time, like he was saying goodbye to a part of himself. Then he walked slowly toward the fence. This time, Thomas let him climb over unmolested. When Marcus reached the top, he paused and looked back. "She has an amazing voice," he said quietly. "Emma, I've listened to her music. She's really talented." "Then respect her talent by respecting her privacy," Thomas replied. Marcus didn't respond. He dropped down on the other side of the fence and disappeared into the darkness. Thomas listened to his footsteps fade away until there was nothing but silence again. Thomas gathered up the equipment and carried it to the security shed near the main gate. He'd figure out what to do with it later. For now, he needed to check on the Pattersons. He knocked on the cottage door. Mr. Patterson answered immediately, like he'd been waiting right behind it. "Is he gone?" Mr. Patterson asked. "He's gone." Thomas confirmed. Mrs. Patterson appeared beside her husband. Her face was drawn with worry. "Did he get any photos?" "The camera was destroyed," Thomas said. "I have the memory cards. Nothing will be published." He saw the relief wash over both their faces. Mrs. Patterson's hand went to her heart. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." "How did he find us?" Mr. Patterson asked. "We've been so careful. We moved here specifically to get away from this kind of attention." Thomas explained about the delivery driver. Mr. Patterson's face darkened with betrayal, but he nodded grimly. "We'll change services," he said, "and we'll be more careful about who we let on the property." "Dad?" They all turned. A teenage girl stood at the top of the stairs, wrapped in an oversized sweater, her long dark hair falling around her face. She looked younger than her 17 years, vulnerable and scared. Emma Patterson. In person, without stage makeup or professional lighting, she looked like any other teenage girl. The kind who should be worried about homework and school dances, not photographers climbing fences in the middle of the night. "It's okay, sweetheart," Mrs. Patterson said quickly. "Everything's fine. Go back to bed." But Emma came down the stairs slowly, her eyes fixed on Thomas. "Someone was trying to take pictures of me, weren't they?" There was no point lying. She was smart enough to figure it out, as Thomas said simply. "But he's gone now, and he didn't get any photos." Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking very small. "This is never going to stop, is it?" The question hung in the air, heavy with resignation. She wasn't asking because she didn't know the answer. She was asking because she needed someone to acknowledge the truth. Thomas looked at Emma Patterson standing there in her oversized sweater, her eyes asking a question that no 17-year-old should have to ask. Her parents moved closer to her, protective, but they didn't try to comfort her with false promises. They knew the truth too. "I can't promise it will stop," Thomas said honestly. "But I can promise that as long as I'm working here, no one will get past me." "Not again." Emma studied his face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Thank you for stopping him. Get some sleep," Thomas said gently. "You're safe here." But as Emma turned to go back upstairs, Thomas caught the look in her eyes. She didn't feel safe. How could she? Her home, the one place that should have been her sanctuary, had been invaded. Even with high fences and security guards, her privacy had been treated as something to be stolen and sold. After the Pattersons went back to bed, Thomas returned to his post. But sleep was impossible now. His mind kept replaying the night's events, the sound of Marcus's camera shattering, the desperation in the photographer's eyes, the resignation in Emma's voice. He pulled out the memory cards from his pocket and examined them in the beam of his flashlight. 2 of them were blank, still in their packaging, but the one from the broken camera showed signs of use. Even cracked and potentially damaged, it might still contain recoverable data. Thomas had a decision to make. He could destroy all the cards right now, grind them under his heel until there was no chance of recovery. That would be the safest option. But something made him hesitate. He thought about Marcus kneeling on the ground, cradling his broken camera like a dying child. The man was clearly desperate, clearly struggling. That didn't excuse what he'd done, but it made Thomas wonder about the system that created people like Marcus. People who would climb fences and invade privacy for money. The hours passed slowly. Thomas checked the perimeter 3 times before his shift ended at dawn. Everything remained quiet, normal, like the night's drama had never happened. When his replacement arrived at 6, Thomas briefed him about the incident and showed him where the confiscated equipment was stored. Then he drove home, exhausted but too wired to sleep. He lived in a small apartment above a convenience store. 15 minutes from the cottage. The walls were thin and the neighbors were loud, but it was home. He made coffee and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I need to talk to you. It's important." Marcus Thomas stared at the message. How had Marcus gotten his number? Then he remembered the equipment. Marcus must have had a contact at the security company. Of course he did. That's how these people operated. Networks of information, everyone selling each other small pieces of privacy. He should delete the message. Block the number. But curiosity got the better of him. "How did you get this number?" Thomas typed back. The response came quickly. "I have my ways. Please. Just 5 minutes. There's something you need to know about Emma." Thomas's stomach clenched. If this is a manipulation, it's not. "I promise. Meet me at Rosie's Diner on 5th Street. Send your minutes. I'll explain everything." Thomas knew he shouldn't go. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea. But that last line kept echoing in his mind. Something you need to know about Emma. What if it was something that could help protect her? What if Marcus knew about other photographers planning to target the cottage? 25 minutes later, Thomas walked into Rosie's Diner. It was a cramped place that smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. filled with construction workers and early morning commuters. Marcus sat in a corner booth, his eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Thomas slid into the seat across from him, didn't say anything. Marcus wrapped his hands around a coffee cup. "Thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes," Thomas said coldly. "Starting now." He looked around nervously, then leaned forward. "I need you to understand something. I'm not a bad person. I know that's what you think, but I'm not. For minutes." Marcus winced. "I have a daughter, Sophia. She's 8 years old. She has leukemia." Thomas felt his stomach drop, but he kept his expression neutral. "Go on. The treatments are expensive. My insurance doesn't cover everything. I've maxed out my credit cards. Borrowed from everyone I know." Marcus's voice cracked. "I was desperate. That photo of Emma was supposed to pay for Sophia's next round of treatment." Thomas sat back, the weight of those words settling over him. He wanted to dismiss it as another manipulation, another lie, but the pain in Marcus's eyes looked genuine. "I'm sorry about your daughter," Thomas said carefully, "but that doesn't give you the right to invade someone else's life." "I know," Marcus said quickly. "I know that. And I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to listen." He pulled out his phone and showed Thomas a photo. A little girl with no hair, smiling despite the tubes connected to her arm. "This is Sophia." Thomas looked at the photo and felt his resolve waver. "The reason I asked you here," Marcus continued, "is because you need to know that I'm not the only one. There are at least 6 other photographers who know about that cottage now." Thomas felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean 6 others?" Marcus set his phone down. "The delivery driver didn't just sell to me. He sold to everyone who would pay. I found out this morning through the network. Some of them are planning to come tonight." "Oh, why are you telling me this?" Thomas asked, his mind already racing through security protocols. "What's in it for you?" Marcus looked down at his coffee. "Because last night, when you could have destroyed my life completely, you didn't. You could have called the police, had me arrested, made sure my face was all over the news, but you gave me a chance to walk away." He met Thomas's eyes. "Because maybe somewhere deep down, I still have a conscience. And because Emma doesn't deserve what's coming," Thomas pulled out his phone. "I need to call the Pattersons. They need to know." "Wait," Marcus said. "There's more. One of the photographers coming tonight isn't just after pictures. He's planning to break into the house." Thomas's hand froze. "What?" "His name is Victor Reeves. He's not like the rest of us. He doesn't just take photos from a distance. He breaks in, plants, cameras, steals personal items to sell online. He's dangerous." Marcus's voice dropped lower. 2 years ago, he broke into an actress's house in California. She woke up and found him standing in her bedroom. The case was settled out of court, and he's been operating ever since. Thomas felt rage building in his chest. "And you work with people like this? You're part of this network?" "I don't work with him," Marcus said quickly. "Nobody wants to work with Victor. But information travels. We all know what everyone else is doing. It's how we avoid stepping on each other's toes." "Give me everything," Thomas said. "Names, plans, everything you know." For the next 10 minutes, Marcus talked. He told Thomas about the network of photographers, the encrypted apps they used, the ways they shared information. He described Victor Reeves in detail: heavy build, tattoo of a camera on his left forearm. He explained that Victor was planning to come around 2 in the morning when everyone would be asleep. Thomas wrote down every detail. When Marcus finished, Thomas stood up. "You're not off the hook," Thomas said. "What you did was still wrong. But thank you for this information. It might save someone from getting hurt." Marcus nodded. "My daughter asked me yesterday what I do for work. I told her I'm a photographer. She asked if I take pictures of beautiful things." His voice broke. I couldn't answer her. Thomas looked at the broken man across from him and felt something shift inside. Marcus wasn't evil. He was desperate, and desperation made people do terrible things. But at least he was trying to make it right. "Get a different job," Thomas said quietly. "Find another way. Your daughter needs a father she can be proud of." Marcus wiped his eyes. I know. Thomas left the diner and immediately called Mr. Patterson. He explained everything Marcus had told him. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. We need to move again, Mr. Patterson said finally. Pack up and leave before tonight, or we can be ready for them, Thomas replied. With your permission, I'd like to bring in additional security. Set up cameras. Make it clear that this house is protected. Another silence. Then Mrs. Patterson's voice came through, speaking in the background. Thomas couldn't hear what she said, but Mr. Patterson's response was firm. Emma doesn't want to run anymore, Mr. Patterson said. She's tired of hiding. She just wants to live her life. He took a breath. Do whatever you need to do, Thomas. Protect our daughter. Thomas spent the day preparing. He called in 2 trusted colleagues from the security company. They installed additional cameras and motion sensors. They reinforced the fence at its weakest points. They created a plan for what to do if Victor Reeves actually attempted to break in. As night fell, Thomas stood at his post once again. But this time, he wasn't alone. His colleagues were positioned at different points around the property. All of them were in communication through earpieces. All of them were ready. The hours ticked by. 10 o'clock, 11, midnight. At 1:47 a.m., the motion sensors tripped. Someone was approaching from the east side. Thomas's earpiece crackled. I've got visual. Tall male, heavy build, matches the description. Do not engage, Thomas whispered back. Let him try the fence. I want him on camera. He watched his tablet screen as Victor Reeves approached the fence. The man moved confidently like he'd done this 100 times before. He pulled out wire cutters and began working on the chain link. That's when Thomas made his move. He activated the new security lights, flooding the entire east side of the property with brilliant white light. Victor froze, caught like a deer in headlights.
Ow.
This property is under surveillance, Thomas called out, his voice amplified by the speaker system they'd installed. You are being recorded. Leave now, or the police will be called. Victor stood there for 3 seconds, his face clearly visible on camera. Then he ran. Thomas watched him disappear into the darkness. He could have chased him. Could have tried to catch him? But that wasn't the point. The point was sending a message. Over the next 2 hours, 3 more photographers approached the cottage. Each time, the lights activated. Each time, Thomas's voice warned them away. Each time, they left by dawn, the message was clear. The cottage was protected. Emma Patterson's home was no longer an easy target. When Thomas's shift ended, he found Emma sitting on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunrise. You've been out here all night? Thomas asked. She nodded. Couldn't sleep. But I heard what you did. The lights. The warnings. She looked up at him. They're not going to stop trying, are they? Maybe not, Thomas admitted. But we'll be ready. Every single time. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. A small, genuine smile. My dad says you caught one of them last night. Before all of this. He said you broke his camera. I didn't break it, Thomas corrected. He broke it himself when he decided to invade your privacy. Emma laughed softly. It was a nice sound. Young and hopeful, despite everything. Thank you, she said, for treating me like a person instead of a product. Thomas sat down beside her on the steps. Together, they watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. For just a few minutes, it was peaceful, normal, the way life should be, somewhere out there. Marcus was hopefully finding a better way to help his daughter. Victor Reeves was planning his next target. Other photographers were deciding whether Emma Patterson was worth the risk, but here, in this moment, a 17-year-old girl could sit on her porch and watch the sunrise without fear. And for Thomas, that made every hour of this long night worth it.